They found my wife dead in a crashed car 3 years ago. I buried her believing it was an accident. Then my son framed me for federal bribery and locked me away for 2.5 years while he looted my $100 million empire. What he never realized is that his own sister was watching every move, recording every crime, and uncovering a truth so dark it would send him to prison for the rest of his life. With the edge of my thumbnail, rough and split from 912 days of concrete and iron, I scratched another thin line into the wall beside my cot. The motion had become something sacred, a ritual performed in darkness, marking time in a place designed to make you forget it existed at all. 912. Tomorrow would be 913. Tomorrow I would walk out of FCI Segoville a free man. Whatever that word meant anymore. I sat on the edge of my mattress and let the silence settle. Before this place, I had slept in a California king in my Highland Park estate. Before this nightmare, I was James Crawford, founder of Crawford Construction and Energy, a company I had built from a single borrowed backhoe and a handshake into a $100 million empire. 50 years of sweat, steel, and Texas sun. Now I was inmate 74183, a number stamped on khaki cloth. But numbers, I had learned, could be deceiving. The October heat pressed through the concrete walls like a living thing. Even at night, Texas refused to cool down. The humidity clung to everything. My thin shirt, the steel frame of my cot, the photographs I kept tucked beneath my pillow. Margaret smiling in bluebonnets outside our first house in Fort Worth. Margaret holding Mia the day we brought her home. Margaret at the company's 25th anniversary gala, her hand in mine, whispering that she was proud of me. Margaret. 3 years gone. 3 years since that phone call shattered my world the first time. Car accident. On I-35. Brakes failed. Dead on impact. I had buried the only woman I ever loved, believing God had simply called her home too soon. I had no reason to think otherwise. Not then. The memories of what came after arrived, whether I wanted them or not. 6 months after Margaret's funeral, Derek brought Brooke home. Brooke Castellano, though I did not know that name then. She introduced herself as Brooke Palmer, a bankruptcy attorney from Houston. Pretty, polished, sympathetic about my grief in all the right ways. They married fast. Too fast. I knew now. But grief makes you blind to things you should see clearly. Then came the morning that ended my life as I knew it. October 14th. I was standing on the Riverside Bridge project site, hard hat on, reviewing structural reports with my foreman, when 3 black SUVs rolled through the gate. FBI. 7 agents. Guns drawn. 200 workers watching as they pushed my face into the hood of their vehicle. Federal bribery and contract fraud. 17 counts. My signature on documents I had never seen. My name on wire transfers I had never authorized. Derek took the witness stand 3 weeks later. My own son. My blood. He wore a charcoal suit I had bought him for his 30th birthday. His voice trembled with rehearsed sorrow. My father pressured me to look the other way. He told me if I didn't sign off on the contracts, he would cut me from the company entirely. I was afraid of him. The jury watched him with sympathy. This handsome young man, terrorized by his powerful father. They believed every word. Then Brooke, sitting in that witness chair, with tears rolling down her cheeks on perfect cue. She clutched the arm of the chair like it was keeping her upright. He threatened me too. Her voice was small and shaking. He said if I told anyone, he would destroy Derek's career. I was terrified. I just wanted to protect my husband. Lies. Sculpted, practiced, devastating lies. Judge Warren did not hesitate. 2.5 years federal prison. Guilty on all counts. I watched the courtroom from behind a wall of shock as Derek embraced Brooke in the gallery. And in that single moment, I caught something in his eyes. Not grief, not guilt, just cold satisfaction. The look of a man who had just removed the only obstacle between himself and everything he wanted. I had tried to fight. I had the documents that proved the signatures were forged, but Derek moved fast. emergency petition to freeze my accounts, claims of mental instability. Without money, I could not afford the forensic experts who might have proven the forgery. The public defender barely read my file, advised me to plead guilty for a reduced sentence. I refused, and I lost. That was 912 days ago. I stood and walked to the steel mirror bolted above the sink. The man looking back was not the man who had entered this place. My hair had gone fully silver. My face had hardened into something lean and angular. I had lost 30 pounds. Not from the food, though that was terrible. From the fire that burned inside me every waking hour. Rage. It had kept me warm through winter nights when the heating failed. It had kept me sharp when everything here was designed to dull you into nothing. I was 72 years old, a Vietnam veteran. I had survived 12 months in the Mekong Delta. I had survived building a company from nothing in a state that respected nothing but results. I had survived burying my wife. I would survive this. No, I would do more than survive. Tomorrow, they expected a broken old man to shuffle out, confused, grateful, harmless. They had no idea what was coming. A voice cut through the darkness from the top bunk. Rough, familiar, carrying the kind of warmth that only comes from shared suffering. You are too damn calm, Jim. Carlos Reyes swung his legs over the edge, his silver hair catching the faint corridor light. His weathered face held a half-smile. Any other man walking free tomorrow would be dancing, praying, something. But you sit there like a man sharpening a knife. I let a ghost of a smile cross my face. Maybe I am Carlos. He studied me with those sharp old eyes. Eyes that had seen the same jungles I had. Eyes that had watched my back for 912 days in this concrete hell, just as they had watched it 50 years ago in Vietnam. Tomorrow, brother, he said quietly. Tomorrow they learn what happens when a real soldier comes home from war. I lay back on my cot and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Derek and Brooke would be waiting outside those gates with cameras and reporters. They would perform their reconciliation, play their roles, expect me to play mine. But I had spent 912 nights planning, 912 nights being patient. And patience, I had learned in the Mekong Delta, was the deadliest weapon a soldier could carry. I closed my eyes. Margaret's face floated in the darkness behind my eyelids. Her smile. Her voice. I will find the truth, Maggie. I whispered it, like a prayer. Whatever they did to you, whatever really happened on that highway, I will find it. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the block, a man cried out in his sleep. The night watch began their rounds, boots echoing on concrete. 912 days of cold patience. Tomorrow, the war begins. The footsteps came an hour later. Not the heavy shuffle of guards in their rubber-soled boots. These were different. The sharp click of expensive leather on polished concrete. The kind of shoes that cost more than most inmates earned in a year on the outside. I knew those footsteps. I had heard them every month for 2.5 years. The guard appeared at my cell door, keys jangling. Visitation. Crawford. Let us go. He cuffed me and led me down the corridor. The fluorescent tubes overhead buzzed and flickered, casting everything in that sickly yellow light that made living men look like corpses. I counted my steps the way I always did. 47 from my cell to the visitation room. I had walked this path more times than I cared to remember. They seated me at the bolted table. Wrists cuffed. Ankles chained to the floor ring. Standard procedure for inmates within 48 hours of release. As if a 72-year-old man might suddenly decide freedom was not worth the wait. The door opened. Derek walked in first. $3,000 worth of Italian wool draped across his shoulders. Charcoal gray, slim cut, the kind of suit that whispered power before its wearer spoke a single word. On his left wrist, catching the fluorescent light, was my Rolex, the Submariner I had bought myself. When Crawford Construction landed its first $10 million contract, Margaret had engraved the back, "Build something that lasts." Now it sat on the wrist of the man who had stolen everything I built. Brooke followed. No tears tonight. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone who believed she had already won. Cream-colored blouse, diamond earrings I had never bought her. Her hair swept back in a way that made her look almost regal. She carried a leather portfolio like a weapon. They sat across from me, and I studied them the way I had learned to study enemies in the jungle. Without emotion, without hurry, just observation. "Hello, Dad." Derek's voice was smooth. "Practiced. You are looking well." I said nothing, just held his gaze until he shifted in his seat. Brooke opened the portfolio and slid a document across the table. Her manicured fingers were precise. "Clinical. We need your signature, Benjamin. The Whitaker Trust requires biometric verification for any transfer exceeding 10 million. We need to move 15 million before the quarterly audit closes." I looked at the paper without touching it. 15 million from Margaret's trust. The money my wife had set aside for our grandchildren, for the company's future, for things that mattered beyond profit. "The audit is in 3 days, Derek pressed. His composure was slipping. Just beneath that polished surface, I could see it. Desperation. His knee bounced under the table. His jaw clenched and unclenched. He needed this money. Needed it badly. Why? That question had kept me awake for weeks. I leaned back, chains clinking against steel. "Why the rush, son?" Derek's eyes hardened. "Do not play games. You know what is at stake." "Do I?" Brooke leaned forward, her voice dropping to something intimate. Warm. The voice she used when she wanted something. "Jim, we are trying to help you. Tomorrow, you walk out with nothing. No money. No house. No company. We are offering you a fresh start. A clean break. Sign this, and we will make sure you are comfortable." Comfortable. I turned the word over in my mouth like something rotten. "You want me comfortable?" "We want this behind us," Derek said. "All of it. The trial, the prison, the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding." I let the word hang between us. He called 2.5 years of hell a misunderstanding. I looked at Brooke, really looked at her, studied the way she held herself, the micro-expression that flickered across her face when she thought I was not watching. Impatience. Not concern. Not guilt. Just the cold frustration of someone whose plan was taking too long. "No," I said. Derek's face darkened. His hands flattened on the table. "Dad, listen to me carefully. Tomorrow you walk out of here with $18 and nowhere to go. I control everything. Every account, every asset, every property. You will be a 72-year-old convicted felon sleeping on a park bench. Is that what you want?" I smiled. Slowly, letting them see it. "What I want," I said quietly, "is for you to remember this moment. Remember how confident you feel right now. How certain you are that you have won. Because very soon, son, you are going to understand what real loss looks like. Empty threats from a broken old man." Brooke's voice dripped contempt, the mask slipping for just a second before she caught herself. The door opened again, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mia walked in wearing a black suit that was all sharp lines and cold authority. Her dark hair pulled back severely. Her face composed into something I had never seen on my daughter before. Not warmth, not love, not even anger, just professional neutrality, as if I were a file number instead of her father. She did not greet me, did not touch my shoulder the way she used to during visits. She simply positioned herself beside Derek, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Mia." I tested her name carefully. She met my eyes. And for one fraction of a second, so brief I might have imagined it, something flickered there. Something raw and desperate and burning. Then it vanished behind that terrible mask. "Dad." Her voice was flat, controlled. "You should sign. It is for the best. The audit will not find anything useful. Derek has managed everything within legal parameters. Fighting will only hurt you more." The words hit harder than Derek's threats, harder than Brooke's contempt. Because this was Mia, my little girl. The 5-year-old who had clung to my leg on her first day of school. The teenager who had defended me against every critic. The young woman who had called me every Sunday without fail for 10 years. Rebecca knows when to be practical, Derek said, smirking. Even she sees the truth. I looked between them. My son, his wife, my daughter. 3 against 1 in this fluorescent tomb. No, I said again. Simply, finally, Derek stood. Chair scraping linoleum. Last chance. I held Mia's gaze. Her jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Her left hand, hanging at her side, clenched into a fist so tight her knuckles went white. And I noticed something. The way she held that fist. Not loosely, not naturally. She was gripping something inside her palm. Something small enough to hide. Goodbye, Dad. Her voice barely above a whisper. Not see you tomorrow. Not take care. Not good luck. Just goodbye. The word hung between us like a loaded gun. She turned and walked out. Back straight. Steps measured. Not once looking back. Derek collected the unsigned papers with barely controlled fury. You will regret this. I watched the door close behind them. Listened to their footsteps fade. Brooke's heels. Derek's expensive leather. And Mia's measured stride. Growing distant. Carrying with it something I could not name. Goodbye, not farewell, not until tomorrow. Just goodbye. As if she were releasing something. Or preparing for something. Or perhaps, and this thought settled in my chest like a splinter of glass I was afraid to touch, perhaps saying goodbye to the version of herself they thought they knew. The guard unlocked my chains. Time to go, Crawford. I let him lead me back. But my mind circled that single word. That clenched fist. That fraction of a second when her mask had cracked, and I had seen fire behind it. Whatever was coming tomorrow, it was bigger than I knew. October sunlight hit my face like a blade. Sharp, clean, almost painful after 912 days of fluorescent tubes and concrete shadows. The release officer slid a manila envelope across the counter, without looking up. His fingers were stained with coffee. His expression held nothing. Not sympathy. Not contempt. Just the mechanical boredom of a man processing paperwork. Sign here. And here. Date at the bottom. I signed. James Robert Crawford. The pen felt foreign in my hand. Heavy. Real. In a way that nothing inside those walls had been real. He pushed the envelope toward me. Personal effects. Confirm everything is present. I opened it. $18 in worn bills. A set of keys to a house I no longer owned. And Margaret's wedding ring. White gold, scratched from 43 years of daily wear. I held it up to the light, turning it slowly. The inscription inside was nearly worn smooth, but I could still read it. Together, we build. I slid it onto my pinky finger. The only finger it fit now, after 30 pounds of lost weight. You are free to go, Crawford. Free. The word tasted strange, like something I had forgotten how to swallow. I walked through the sally port, each step deliberate, measured, the way I used to walk through jungle when every shadow could be the last thing you ever saw. The morning air filled my lungs. Texas, in October. Warm earth. Distant mesquite. The faint chemical tang of highway exhaust carried on a southern wind. The outer gate buzzed, rolled open with a mechanical groan. And there, beyond the chain link and razor wire, the world waited. News vans lined the access road. 3 of them. Satellite dishes extended toward the pale blue sky. Reporters clustered near the parking area. Cameras shouldered, microphones ready. And center stage, positioned precisely where every lens could capture him, stood my son. Derek wore a navy suit today, more somber than last night. A performance of humility. In his hands, a bouquet of white roses so large it looked almost absurd. Beside him, Brooke in a pale yellow dress, one hand pressed against her chest in rehearsed emotion, tissues visible in her other hand. The picture of family reconciliation. I walked toward the gate. Steady, unhurried, my eyes fixed straight ahead. Dad. Derek's voice projected across the distance, pitched perfectly for the microphones. Welcome home. We are so glad this is behind us. We missed you so much. The cameras swiveled toward me, red recording lights blinking. This was their moment, the narrative they had prepared. Prodigal father returns to loving family, forgiveness, redemption. A beautiful lie for the evening news. I kept walking. Dad, wait. Derek stepped into my path, roses thrust forward, smile wide for the cameras. His voice dropped half a register, the practiced warmth. Let us take you home. We have your room ready. Everything you need. I walked past him, simply adjusted my path 2 steps to the left, and continued forward as if he were a signpost. An obstacle of no consequence. Dad. His hand grabbed my arm. Hard. Desperate. His whisper came fast and furious, hidden beneath the smile he maintained for the lenses. Get in our car now. You have nothing. Nowhere to go. Do not embarrass yourself. I stopped, turned slowly to face him. Let my eyes find his and hold them with everything I had compressed into 912 days of silence. Let go, I said quietly, or I will scream assault, and every camera here will broadcast it tonight. His fingers dug in for 1 more second. I watched the calculation flicker behind his eyes. The cost-benefit analysis of a man whose public image was everything. Then he released me. Stepped back. The roses crumpled slightly in his tightening grip. I turned away from him, and that is when I heard it. The low, liquid purr of a powerful engine. Every head in the parking area turned. Every camera pivoted. A black Range Rover glided through the access road like a predator entering a clearing. Not rushing, not hesitating, moving with the quiet confidence of serious money. The paint gleamed obsidian in the morning sun. Chrome details threw light like small explosions. The windows were tinted so dark they revealed nothing. It stopped directly in front of me, precisely positioned, as if the driver had rehearsed this moment a dozen times. The driver's door opened. A young man stepped out, late 20s, navy suit, no tie, worn with the effortless ease of someone who dressed well every day without thinking about it. He walked around the vehicle with professional economy and opened the rear passenger door. Mr. Crawford. His voice carried clearly across the parking lot, reaching every microphone, every camera. Welcome back, sir. Your team is waiting. Behind me. I heard Derek's sharp intake of breath. A reporter called out. Mr. Crawford, who sent the car? Is someone backing you financially? I did not answer. I slid into the Range Rover, feeling cool leather embrace me, smelling the scent of quality materials and careful preparation. The young man closed the door with a solid thunk that sealed out the chaos like a vault. Through the tinted window, I watched Derek. My son stood frozen in the October sun, white roses hanging forgotten at his side, petals beginning to fall onto hot asphalt like small surrenders. His mouth worked, but no sound came. Brooke clutched his arm, her composure cracking, her carefully maintained mask showing its first fracture. Reporters swarmed them now. Microphones thrust forward. Who was that? Derek. How did your father afford a Range Rover? Is there money you did not know about? The driver returned to his seat. The engine hummed. We began to move, smooth, silent, leaving Derek drowning in questions he could not answer. And then, from the back seat, from the shadows on my left where I had not thought to look, came a voice. Rough, familiar, carrying a laugh I had last heard through prison walls just hours ago. Damn, Jim. You always knew how to make an exit. I turned. Carlos Reyes sat beside me, no longer in prison khakis but a navy vest over a crisp white shirt. His silver hair was combed back. His weathered face split into a grin that showed all his teeth. He looked like a different man. No, he looked like the man he had been before. Sharp, dangerous, alive. Carlos. My voice came out rough with surprise. How the hell are you here? You were in your bunk 2 hours ago. He winked. Released at 6 this morning. Compassionate grounds. Turns out my parole violation was overturned on appeal 3 days ago. Funny how that works. I stared at him. The man who had watched my back for 912 days, who had appeared in my cell 18 months ago, like a gift from God, who knew my stories from Vietnam because he had lived them beside me. Who arranged this? I asked. Carlos leaned back against the leather, that old soldier's grin still playing across his face. He folded his hands over his vest and nodded toward the road ahead. The same person who has been arranging everything for the past 2.5 years, Jim. The same person who put me in that cell to keep you alive. He turned those sharp, knowing eyes on me. Your daughter sends her regards. The Range Rover carried us north through Dallas, past strip malls and highways, past the world that had kept turning while I counted days on concrete. And for the first time in 913 days, I felt something other than rage. I felt the beginning of hope. The Ritz-Carlton penthouse occupied the entire 40th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, framing Dallas in every direction. The skyline I had helped build, cranes and towers and steel reaching toward a pale October sky. Clean lines, warm light, the faint scent of fresh flowers on a side table. Someone had prepared this with care. The bathroom was larger than my cell. I turned the shower to scalding and stepped under the water. Let it hit my shoulders, my face, my chest, pressed my palms against the marble wall, and scrubbed 912 days off my skin. My hands shook, not from weakness, from rage cracking through the walls I had built around it. I let my fists pound the marble once, twice. Then I breathed, rebuilt the walls. This was not the time for weakness. This was the time for precision. On the counter, someone had laid out a charcoal suit. White shirt. No tie. Someone had taken my measurements. Planned for this moment with the kind of care that spoke of love, not logistics. When I walked into the main living area, 2 people waited. Carlos stood by the windows, coffee in hand. Beside the conference table sat a man I had never met, mid-50s. Steady eyes behind rectangular glasses, blue blazer over white Oxford. He rose immediately. Mr. Crawford. Russell Keene. It is an honor. Mr. Keene. I studied his face. You are my lawyer. Have been for 18 months. He gestured toward manila folders, arranged in precise rows. Please, sit. I settled into the leather chair. Carlos took the seat to my right. Before we begin, Russell said, you should understand the full picture. He glanced at Carlos. Sergeant Reyes. Carlos set down his coffee. Jim, I need you to hear this straight. Mia hired me 2 years and 3 months ago. 6 months after your conviction. She walked into my office in San Antonio and said her father was innocent and she was going to prove it. She needed someone inside the prison. Someone who could protect you. I stared at him. 18 months sleeping 3 feet above my head. You were never there by accident, I said. No. I violated my parole on purpose. Mia arranged the placement. I requested to be your cellmate through a guard she had on payroll. Every report on your safety went to her weekly. For 18 months, my daughter had put a 74-year-old man in prison to protect me. Brother, Carlos said with that crooked grin. 12 months in the Mekong Delta was worse. This was vacation with better food. Russell opened the first folder. As of 8 this morning, your power of attorney is revoked. You are active majority shareholder of Crawford Construction and Energy. 65% voting control. All accounts held by Derek Crawford are frozen pending forensic audit. Everything. Corporate cards, personal checking, savings, household credit. As of 3 hours ago, Derek Crawford has access to approximately $180 in his wallet. I allowed myself a breath. Russell pushed a second folder forward. Inside was a USB drive and a single sheet of white paper, folded once. Handwritten in blue ink. This arrived at my office 8 months ago, Russell said. No return address. I unfolded the paper. The handwriting hit me like a fist. Neat, precise. That particular leftward slant I had watched develop from crayon scribbles to college essays. 912 days of evidence. Everything you need. Trust Carlos. Trust Russell. They are loyal. I never left you, Dad. Not for one single day. My throat closed. Mia, standing cold in that visitation room, telling me to sign, playing her part so perfectly, I had almost believed her. Almost. Mr. Crawford. Russell's voice grew careful. That drive contains 2.5 years of documentation. Shell companies. Forged signatures, analyzed by forensic experts. Wire transfers. Payments to corrupt officials. He paused. It also contains something else. Jim. Carlos put his hand on my shoulder. This next part is going to be hard. Russell slid a photograph across the table. A mechanic's invoice, dated 3 years and 2 months ago, paid through a shell company called Lone Star Consulting, LLC. Registered owner, Brooke Palmer Crawford. Service rendered. Russell read aloud. Brake line modification. Vehicle, 2019 Lexus RX 350. Registered to Margaret Ann Crawford. The room went silent. Jim. Carlos gripped my shoulder. Margaret's accident on I-35. It was not mechanical failure. Brooke Crawford paid $50,000 to a mechanic in Fort Worth named Ray Gonzalez to sever the brake lines on your wife's vehicle. Russell's voice was quiet. Factual. 3 days later, Margaret lost control on I-35 northbound. She died on impact. Margaret, my Maggie. Driving to her garden club that Tuesday morning, singing along to the radio, never knowing, never having a chance. They killed her. The words barely made sound. Yes, and Mia found the proof 8 months ago. That is when she contacted the FBI. I stared at the invoice. Brooke, this woman who sat across from me last night and smiled. Who said Margaret would have wanted me to sign? She killed my wife, then framed me, then sat at my table and invoked my dead wife's name. Where is Brooke now? My voice was steady, cold, rebuilt in the space of a single breath. Highland Park Estate, Russell said. Unaware. FBI has her under surveillance. The RICO investigation requires more time. I placed my hand flat on Mia's letter. Felt the paper beneath my palm. Then we do this right. Piece by piece. Every lie exposed. Every dollar traced. Every crime documented. When we are done, they will not just lose my company. They will lose their freedom. The way they took mine. The way they took Margaret's life. Russell nodded. That is exactly the plan, sir. I looked out at Dallas. Somewhere in Highland Park, Brooke was pouring coffee in my kitchen, wearing my wife's death like an invisible crown. Somewhere, Derek was discovering his accounts frozen, and somewhere, my daughter was maintaining her mask, waiting. I am coming, Maggie. I am coming for all of them. Russell had advised waiting, building the case quietly, letting the audit do its work in the shadows. But I had spent 912 days in shadows. I was done hiding. By noon, I stood behind a podium on the 35th floor of Crawford Construction Tower, my building. My name etched into the granite lobby downstairs in letters 2 feet tall. Behind me, the company logo gleamed under studio lights that Russell's team had arranged in under 3 hours. Press credentials had been issued to 14 outlets. Every major network in Dallas. 2 national feeds. I wore the charcoal suit. Margaret's ring on my pinky. My hair silver under the lights. I looked nothing like the broken convict Derek expected to shuffle out of Segoville this morning. I looked like what I was, the founder, the owner, the man who built this. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice carried without effort. The microphone was almost unnecessary. 50 years of commanding construction sites had given me a voice that filled rooms without trying. I am announcing a complete restructuring of Crawford Construction and Energy leadership. Over the past 30 months, Serious financial irregularities have been discovered within company operations. A full forensic audit is underway. All parties responsible will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Questions erupted. But I raised one hand, and the room fell silent. I will take no questions at this time. The audit will speak for itself. Thank you. I stepped away from the podium. Russell appeared at my elbow, guiding me toward the private elevator. Clean, he murmured. Perfect delivery. Every network will lead with this tonight. The elevator doors closed. I exhaled, felt the adrenaline receding like a tide. It was done. The first shot fired. Now I needed to watch it land. 14 miles away in Highland Park, it landed like a bomb. Derek had woken late. 10 o'clock. The bed was empty beside him. Brooke already downstairs, he assumed. He reached for his phone on the nightstand and found 43 missed calls, 27 texts. His CFO, Michael, his assistant, his personal banker, numbers he did not recognize. His stomach dropped before his mind caught up. He called Michael first. The phone barely completed one ring. Derek. Michael's voice was tight, strained. Where have you been? I have been calling since 8. What is happening? Your father revoked power of attorney this morning. The moment he was released, he filed as active majority shareholder. Every account is frozen. Corporate, personal, everything. SEC emergency audit authorized. Nothing moves until it is complete. Derek sat up. The room tilted. That is not possible. He does not have access. He has nothing. He has 65% of this company, Derek. He always did. You only had proxy control. That died the second he revoked the POA. Derek's hand clenched the phone until the case creaked. The $4 million transfer from the Whitaker Trust? Cancelled, along with every pending transaction. Derek, you need to turn on CNBC right now. Derek grabbed the remote from the nightstand, fumbled with buttons. The screen flickered to life, and there was his father, standing behind a podium, Crawford Construction logo gleaming, looking powerful, controlled, dangerous. The closed captioning scrolled across the bottom. Serious financial irregularities. Full investigation. All parties responsible. Derek's vision narrowed to a tunnel. How much do I have? He whispered. Cash. Right now. How much can I actually access? Michael was quiet for a moment. Maybe $180. Whatever is in your wallet. Everything else is frozen or canceled. The house, the cars, the credit cards, all company assets or under your father's name. Derek, you have nothing. Nothing. The word echoed in the bedroom. His bedroom. Except it was not his bedroom. It was his father's house. His father's furniture. His father's sheets. Everything around him belonged to someone else. Had always belonged to someone else. Derek threw the remote at the television. The screen cracked but kept playing. His father's face still there. Still speaking. Still destroying him with the calm precision of a man who had planned this for a very long time. Brooke appeared in the doorway. Silk robe. Coffee in hand. Her face was composed. Too composed. She watched Derek with an expression that was not fear, not panic, not even surprise. Just cold assessment. The look of someone recalculating. We have a problem, Derek said, his voice shaking. Brooke sipped her coffee. I can see that. He stared at her, waiting for the panic. The scramble. The what do we do that any normal wife would produce when their world collapsed. Instead, she set the mug down on the dresser with precise care. We need to move faster, she said, her voice flat, clinical, like she was discussing a supply chain issue at work. Faster? Brooke, everything is frozen. My cards, the accounts, all of it. We have nothing. You have nothing. The correction was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Derek caught it. The emphasis on you. Not we. You. Before he could respond, She picked up her phone and walked into the bathroom, closed the door, locked it. Through the wood, Derek heard her voice. Low, urgent, speaking to someone in a tone he had never heard from her before. He pressed his ear to the door but caught only fragments. Papa. Problem. Move the money. Tonight. Papa. Derek pulled back from the door. His wife stood on the other side, speaking to someone she called Papa, arranging to move money on the same morning his father had frozen everything. And she was not panicking. She was executing. Like this was a contingency she had always known might come. Who was she calling? The question sat in his chest like a stone. But before he could process it, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on instinct. His father's voice came through the speaker. Cold. Precise. Carrying the weight of 912 days, compressed into a single sentence. How does nothing feel, son? Welcome to day one. You have many more coming. The line went dead. Derek stood in the hallway of his father's house, holding a dead phone, wearing his father's Rolex, listening to his wife speak to a stranger through a locked door. And for the first time since the trial, a feeling crept up his spine that was not anger or frustration or impatience. It was fear. 2 days passed. 2 days of Derek clawing at walls, calling lawyers who would not return his messages, calling banks that repeated the same word. Frozen. Calling former colleagues who suddenly had meetings they could not reschedule. 2 days of watching his name trend on social media beside words like fraud, investigation, and criminal. 2 days of Brooke disappearing for hours at a time, returning with nothing but silence and that cold assessment in her eyes. But Derek Crawford was his father's son, in one respect. He did not quit easily. The wind farm deal. $30 million. Texas Energy Partners had been circling Crawford Construction for months. A joint venture to build a solar-wind hybrid facility outside Abilene. The contracts were nearly finalized before the freeze. If Derek could close this deal personally, secure the investment outside company channels, he would have leverage. Proof he could still operate. Still produce. He made the call. Robert Whitfield answered on the second ring. Dinner tonight, Capitol Grill, 7 o'clock. Let me walk you through the revised projections. Whitfield hesitated, then agreed. Derek spent the afternoon preparing. He ironed his best remaining shirt, the navy one Brooke had picked out for his 37th birthday. He polished his shoes in the bathroom sink. He rehearsed numbers until they flowed without effort. 30 million, 45% return in 18 months. Conservative estimate. He arrived at Capitol Grill at 6:45. The private dining room in back. Mahogany paneling. Leather chairs. Low lighting that made every conversation feel important. He ordered a bottle of the 2012 Opus 1 before the Whitfields arrived. $600. A statement. Confidence projected through vintage. Robert and Sandra Whitfield appeared at 7 sharp, old Texas Energy money. Third generation. Robert was 68, silver-haired, with the kind of steady gaze that evaluated everything and committed to nothing without certainty. Sandra wore pearls and a quiet authority that came from decades beside power. Derek stood, shook hands, smiled the smile he had practiced in the mirror. Thank you for coming, Robert, Sandra. I know the timing is unusual, but I want to show you why this project is worth your attention regardless of the noise. Robert settled into his chair, studied Derek over the menu. Before we discuss business, son, how is your father? We saw the press conference. That must be difficult for the family. Derek's smile held. Dad is adjusting. Coming home after time away is always complicated. We are handling it privately. Sandra's eyebrows rose slightly. Handling it. Such a clinical word for what seemed like quite a dramatic return. Derek redirected. Smoothly. Professionally. The way he had learned to redirect for 2.5 years. Let me walk you through the projections. The Abilene site alone generates enough capacity for 40,000 homes. Combined solar and wind. 12 turbines. Revenue stream within 14 months. He spoke for 20 minutes. The numbers were real. The project was legitimate. This was the one thing Derek had actually built himself. The one piece of Crawford construction that bore his genuine fingerprint. And for 20 minutes, Robert Whitfield listened with growing interest. The server appeared with their entrees. Filet mignon, grilled branzino, a second bottle of wine. The conversation flowed. Sandra asked about the environmental impact studies. Robert discussed tax incentives. Derek felt the deal forming, felt the lifeline extending toward him. Then the check came. The server placed the leather portfolio at Derek's elbow. $1,400. 4 entrees. 2 bottles of wine. Tax and gratuity. Derek reached into his jacket and produced the corporate American Express. The black card. No limit. The card that had never been declined in 2.5 years of extravagant living. He slid it into the portfolio without looking at the total. Confidence. Always confidence. The server disappeared. Robert leaned forward to discuss timelines. Sandra made notes on her phone. Derek breathed. The server returned, his expression apologetic. Sir, I am sorry. This card has been declined. Would you like to try another? The words hung in the private dining room like a gunshot. Derek's smile held by force of will alone. That is impossible. Run it again, please. I did, sir. 3 times. It is not going through. Heat climbed Derek's neck. Use this one. He pulled out his personal visa. The one linked to his checking account. The one he already knew was frozen. But hope made him irrational. Made him forget what Michael had said 2 days ago. Made him believe maybe, somehow, one account had slipped through. The server took it. Returned in 90 seconds. Also declined, sir. I apologize. Do you have another form of payment? The private dining room shrank. The mahogany walls pressed inward. Across the table, Robert Whitfield's expression shifted. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just a subtle recalculation behind those steady eyes. The kind of shift that killed deals not with rejection but with doubt. Sandra set down her napkin. Derek. Robert's voice was gentle. Perhaps we should continue this conversation another time. When things are more settled. Robert, please. The numbers are solid. This is a temporary situation. Robert stood, extended his hand. The handshake was firm. Final. We will be in touch. They would not be in touch. Derek knew it the way you know weather is changing. The barometric pressure of opportunity dropping to 0. Robert placed his hand on Sandra's back, and they walked out. Past Derek. Past the server still holding the check. Past the remains of a $1,400 dinner that would not be paid for tonight. Derek sat alone in the private dining room, the half-eaten filet growing cold, the wine warming in its glass, the server hovering at a respectful distance, patient and uncomfortable. $180 in his wallet. He had already spent $60 on the valet, and tip for the sommelier earlier. That left $120. The check was $1,400. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He should not have answered, but he was past rational decisions. The voice on the other end was calm, measured, carrying something that might have been satisfaction or might have been sorrow. It was impossible to tell with his father. Enjoy your last supper, son. The line went dead before Derek could respond. He sat with the phone pressed to his ear, listening to nothing. The server cleared his throat. Sir. About the check. Derek looked at the man. Really looked at him. This stranger, in a white shirt who was simply doing his job. Who did not know that the man sitting before him had once commanded a $100 million empire. Who did not know that $1,400 might as well have been $14 million for all the difference it made. I need to make a call, Derek said. His voice did not sound like his own. He walked to the restroom, locked himself in a stall, sat on the closed lid, and stared at his phone, his hands trembling, the taste of $600 wine turning to acid on his tongue. Enjoy your last supper. His father's words, delivered with the precision of a man who had spent 912 days planning exactly this moment. And Derek understood, finally and completely, that this was only the beginning. The next afternoon, Derek turned onto Lakeside Drive and saw the police cruisers. Two of them, parked in front of the Highland Park estate with their lights off but their presence unmistakable. Behind them, a white van with Dalton Moving Company painted on the side. The iron gates stood open. People moved in and out of his house carrying boxes. No, not his house. It had never been his house. He pulled the rental car to the curb. His hands were shaking. The rental was a Hyundai, economy class, paid for with $70 cash from his shrinking wallet. 3 days ago, he had driven a company Porsche Cayenne. That was gone now. Repossessed yesterday afternoon, along with Brooks' Mercedes and the Land Rover he kept for weekend trips. Derek stepped out into October heat. The sun was relentless. Sweat formed instantly on his back, soaking through the only clean shirt he had left. The same navy shirt from last night's disaster at Capitol Grill. A court official stood at the front gate. Gray suit. Leather portfolio. The kind of man who delivered bad news for a living and had long stopped feeling anything about it. Mr. Derek Crawford? The man opened his portfolio. I am serving you with immediate eviction. This property is owned solely by James Robert Crawford, acquired 1987, 12 years prior to your birth. You have no legal claim to residence. This is my home. Derek's voice cracked on the word. I grew up here. No, son. It is my home. Jim stood on the front steps, arms at his sides, charcoal suit from this morning. Margaret's ring catching sunlight. His face held nothing. No anger. No triumph. Just the flat assessment of a man reclaiming what was stolen. Derek stared at his father. The man he had put in prison. The man who should have been broken. Shuffling. Grateful for scraps. Instead, Jim Crawford stood in front of his own house with police escort and legal authority, looking exactly like what he was. The owner of everything Derek thought he had taken. You cannot do this. Derek's voice rose. I lived here for 2.5 years. I maintained the property. I paid the utilities. With my money, Jim said quietly, using my accounts, sleeping in my bed, wearing my watch. He nodded toward Derek's wrist. I will take that back now. Derek's hand went to the Rolex involuntarily. The Submariner. Build something that lasts engraved on the back. Now, Jim repeated. Derek unclasped it. His fingers fumbled with the mechanism. The watch came free, and he held it out. Jim did not step forward to take it, simply waited, making Derek walk to him, making him cross the distance between them and place it in his father's open palm like an offering, like a surrender. Jim closed his fingers around the watch without looking at it. Officer. He turned to the nearest policeman. Please escort them inside to collect personal belongings. 30 minutes. Personal items only. Nothing purchased with company funds. Brooke appeared from inside the house. Hair uncombed. No makeup. Wearing jeans and a wrinkled blouse that Derek had never seen before. She carried a leather bag over one shoulder and moved with the quick efficiency of someone who had already packed, who had perhaps been ready to leave for days. Let us just get what we need, she said, her voice flat. No emotion, no drama. She did not look at Jim, did not acknowledge the police or the moving crew, just walked toward the garage where their suitcases were apparently already waiting. 30 minutes later, they stood at the end of the driveway. 2 suitcases. 1 garment bag. That was everything. Everything personal. Everything that was actually theirs. The designer clothes purchased on company cards stayed behind. The jewelry bought with embezzled funds. The artwork. The wine collection. The Egyptian cotton sheets. All of it belonged to Jim Crawford. The iron gates began to close. Slow. Mechanical. Final. Through the narrowing gap, Derek met his father's eyes one last time. Jim stood in the doorway of his home. His house restored. His territory reclaimed. And on his face, Derek saw nothing resembling satisfaction. Just cold patience. the expression of a man checking items off a very long list. The gates locked with a clang that echoed down the quiet street. A black BMW passed along Lakeside Drive at that moment. Tinted windows, moving at normal speed. Not stopping, not slowing. Except it did slow, for 1 second. Just long enough for Derek to catch the shape of a woman behind the wheel. Dark hair pulled back. Sunglasses. Then the BMW accelerated smoothly around the corner and was gone. Mia, his sister, had been watching, had driven past to see it happen, and had not stopped, had not spoken, had not shown one flicker of the sister who used to bring him coffee on Saturday mornings. A news van turned onto the street. Then another. Derek grabbed both suitcases and pulled Brooke toward the rental car. They drove in silence to a motel on the south side, a place Derek had never known existed. $45 a night. The parking lot cracked and weedy, the lobby smelling of industrial cleaner and something sour beneath it. Room 214, second floor. The carpet was stained, the bedspread questionable. A watermark spread across the ceiling like a bruise. The air conditioner rattled but produced only warm air. Derek set the suitcases down, sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the wall. Brooke stood by the door. She had not put her bag down, had not removed her shoes. She held her passport in her left hand. When had she grabbed her passport? "I am leaving," she said. Derek looked up. Her face was blank, not angry, not sad, not conflicted, just done. The way someone looks when they close a browser tab. "What?" "This is over, Derek. There is nothing left here for me. We are married. We can fight this together. Get a lawyer. Contest the freeze. You have no money for a lawyer." Brooke's voice was clinical. "You have no money for anything. This room costs $45 a night. You have approximately $120. In 3 days, you will be sleeping in that car. So you are just leaving, after everything?" Brooke picked up her leather bag, adjusted it on her shoulder with practiced ease. She looked at Derek the way someone looks at a tool that has broken. Mild disappointment. Nothing more. "You were useful," she said. "Now you are not." The door opened. Closed. Her footsteps faded down the exterior corridor. Quick. Efficient. Not once slowing or hesitating. The sound of a car door. An engine starting. Tires on gravel. Then nothing. Derek sat on the stained bedspread in the silence of room 214. His wife gone. His house gone. His money gone. His company gone. $120 between him and the street. On the nightstand, the clock radio glowed red. 8:47 p.m. Outside, traffic hummed on the interstate. Somewhere in Highland Park, his father was sleeping in his own bed for the first time in 913 days. Somewhere, Brooke was driving toward whatever life she had been planning all along. The life that clearly never included Derek Crawford. He lay back on the mattress, stared at the water-stained ceiling, and in the silence, one question circled his mind like a vulture. Where was she going? Who was Papa? And what had he married? 3 days. 72 hours alone in room 214, with nothing but the sound of the broken air conditioner and his own thoughts eating him alive. Derek sat on the edge of the mattress counting bills for the third time that morning. 2 20s, 3 10s, 4 5s, 6 1s, $116. He had spent 4 on a gas station sandwich yesterday. The bread was stale. The ham was questionable. He ate it in 2 bites and was still hungry. The motel room had become a furnace. The air conditioner rattled and wheezed but produced only warm air that smelled of dust and old cigarette smoke. The thermostat on the wall read 93 degrees. October in Texas should not be this brutal, but the universe seemed to have abandoned any pretense of fairness where Derek Crawford was concerned. He had counted the roaches. 7, 3 in the bathroom, 2 behind the television, 2 more near the baseboard under the window. He had stopped killing them after the second day. What was the point? They lived here. He was the intruder. 3 days ago, Brooke had walked out with her passport and her leather bag, and not one backward glance. Her phone was disconnected. He had tried 14 times. Straight to a recording. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Not turned off. Not going to voicemail. Disconnected. As if the number itself had been erased from existence. Where was she? Who was Papa? The questions circled without answers. He had married Brooke Palmer 3 years ago. A bankruptcy attorney from Houston. Elegant. Sharp. Sympathetic about his grief for Margaret. She had appeared in his life 6 months after his mother's funeral, like a solution to every problem he did not know he had. And now she was gone. Evaporated. Like she had never existed at all. Derek picked up his phone. The screen was cracked from when he had thrown it against the motel wall 2 days ago. The spiderweb fracture distorted everything, but the phone still worked. He scrolled through his contacts, past names that used to mean something. Business partners who would not answer. Friends who had vanished with his money. Lawyers who required retainers he could not pay. He stopped at one name. The one he had been avoiding since the eviction. The one person who might still have a reason to care. Not because of money or power or what Derek could provide, but because of blood, because of childhood, because of Saturday mornings building pillow forts in the living room while their mother made pancakes. Mia. His thumb hovered over the call button. Pride fought with desperation. Desperation won. It won easily. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4. He was about to hang up when she answered. Hello, Derek. Her voice was controlled, professional, cold. The same voice she had used in the prison visitation room. The same flat tone that gave nothing away. Mia. His voice cracked on her name. The childhood nickname rose from somewhere deep, somewhere before all of this. Please, I am begging you. I am your brother. Talk to Dad. Tell him I am sorry. Tell him anything. I will do anything. Silence. 2 seconds. 3. Then her voice came back, measured. Each word selected with surgical precision. You made your choice, Derek. Mia, please. You chose Brooke over Dad. You chose money over family. You stood in a courtroom and lied. You watched our father be led away in handcuffs, and you felt nothing but relief because you got what you wanted. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But you are my sister. You are supposed to. I was your sister. Past tense. Her voice cut clean. That ended when you chose to destroy the only parent we had left. When you chose ambition over loyalty. When you chose to believe a woman you had known for 6 months over a father who loved you for 38 years. Derek's eyes burned. Mia, I have nothing. No money. No home. Nowhere to go. Brooke left. I am alone. Please. You are not alone, Derek. You have exactly what you gave Dad. A prison of your own making. She paused. The only difference is his had guards. Yours has roaches, and a broken air conditioner, and the knowledge that you did this to yourself. But I tried to warn you. At the prison. At the house. I gave you chances to stop. To think. But you chose this path. Now you walk it. Mia, wait. Please. Just. Goodbye, Derek. The line went dead. Clean. Final. No hesitation. No lingering. Just gone. Derek held the phone to his ear for a long time after the call ended, listening to dead air. His reflection stared back at him from the cracked screen. Gaunt. Unshaven. Eyes hollow. He barely recognized himself. He let the phone fall to the mattress. It bounced once and settled against the lumped pillow. His hand went to his back pocket. Wallet. He pulled it out and opened it, looking for nothing. Looking for something. His fingers found a crease in the leather lining. A fold he had not opened in years. He pulled out a photograph. Creased and soft from time. The edges worn white. A family. Standing in front of the Highland Park house on a Christmas morning. Jim in a red sweater. Arm around Margaret. Both laughing at something off camera. Derek, 8 years old, holding a football, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera with the kind of joy that only children and the truly innocent can produce. And Mia, 5 years old, dark pigtails, sitting on Jim's shoulders, her small hands gripping his hair, her face split with the widest smile. Before Brooke, before the money, before the trial, before 912 days, and everything that led to them. Derek stared at the photograph until his vision blurred, until the faces swam and merged and became something he could no longer clearly see. He was still holding it when the television caught his attention. He had left it on for noise, company in the silence, background sound to fill the void where a life used to be. But the banner scrolling across the bottom of the screen made him sit upright. Breaking. FBI announces major RICO investigation into Texas construction industry. Multiple arrests expected. Sources confirm connection to organized crime network operating across 3 states. Derek stared at the screen. RICO. Federal racketeering. Construction industry. Texas. And Brooke had disappeared 3 days ago. With her passport. Calling someone Papa. Saying, move the money. Brooke Palmer. Except that was not her name, was it? Palmer was a convenience. A costume. The way everything about her had been a costume. The sympathy. The tears. The love. Who was she? Who was Papa? And what had Derek helped her do? The news anchor continued. Sources indicate the investigation centers on shell companies used to funnel construction contracts through fraudulent intermediaries. Multiple states affected. Arrests imminent. Shell companies. Fraudulent contracts. The same charges that had put his father in prison. The same crimes Brooke had orchestrated and pinned on Jim Crawford. Derek looked at the family photograph still in his hand. Then at the television. Then at the cracked phone on the mattress. Everything clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. He had not just betrayed his father for money. He had betrayed his father for a stranger. A ghost. A woman who never existed. And whatever was coming next was going to be worse than anything he had imagined. Monday morning. 2 weeks since I had walked out of Segoville. 2 weeks of methodical, patient, piece-by-piece destruction. And now the final piece of Phase 1. Crawford Construction Tower. 35th floor. The boardroom I had designed myself 20 years ago, when this building was still blueprints and ambition. 12-foot windows overlooking Dallas. A mahogany table long enough to seat 9. 9 leather chairs. 9 nameplates in polished brass. 7 board members sat in their usual positions. Men and women I had selected over decades for their judgment, their loyalty, their ability to build things that lasted. Patricia Holden, longest serving, 16 years. Marcus Webb, head of operations. Sandra Liu. Raymond Torres. Each one watching me with expressions ranging from concern to quiet fury as Russell distributed the forensic audit summary. I took chair 8. My chair. The one at the head of the table that had sat empty for 2.5 years while my son played king. Chair 9 remained empty. Margaret's chair. The brass nameplate still read Elizabeth Margaret Crawford. Dormant since her death. Waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice filled the room the way it used to. Without effort. Without apology. Thank you for convening on short notice. What you are about to see explains everything. Russell connected his laptop to the wall screen. The first slide appeared. Revenue decline under Derek Crawford. 45%. Operating debt increase. 220%. Projected insolvency within 8 months. Patricia Holden inhaled sharply. Dear God, this is Crawford Construction's current state. I let the numbers breathe. 2.5 years of what my son called modernization. 2.5 years of systematic looting disguised as leadership. Next slide. Wire transfers highlighted in red. Dozens of them. Recipient accounts traced through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Delaware, and New Jersey. Total transferred. $2.7 million. Raymond Torres leaned forward. He was embezzling through shell companies? Conservative estimate, Russell said. We are still tracing secondary accounts. I opened my mouth to continue when the boardroom door slammed open hard enough to crack against the wall. Derek stood in the doorway, breathing hard, wild-eyed. He wore wrinkled jeans and a stained t-shirt, his hair uncombed, his face unshaven and gaunt. He looked nothing like the polished CEO who had sat at this table 2 weeks ago. He looked like what he was, a desperate man watching everything collapse. This meeting is illegal. His voice was too loud, cracking at the edges. I am still the legal CEO. You cannot hold board meetings without my authorization. I did not stand, did not turn my chair, simply looked at my son with the assessment I would give a stranger who had wandered into the wrong room. You are nothing, I said quietly. You are a thief who wore a suit for 2.5 years. Underneath, you were always nothing. I built this company's revenue by 30% in the first year. Derek lurched forward, grabbing the edge of the table, his knuckles white. I modernized operations. I secured new contracts. You destroyed it. Every number on that screen is your legacy. Debt. Loss. Embezzlement. That is what you built. Derek's eyes darted around the table, searching for allies, for sympathy, for one face that might defend him. Patricia Holden looked away. Marcus Webb studied his folder. Sandra Liu met Derek's gaze briefly, then dropped her eyes. Nothing. No one. Russell stepped forward. Mr. Derek Crawford, you are hereby notified that the United States Attorney's Office is preparing federal charges of embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to retain legal counsel. Shut up. Derek pointed at Russell. You are nobody. You are just his lawyer. I am the lawyer with 2.5 years of evidence documenting your crimes. Russell's voice did not waver. Every transfer, every forged signature, every lie. Derek turned back to me. Dad. His voice shifted. Desperate now. Pleading. This is our company. Our family business. Mom would have wanted us to work together. The mention of Margaret in his mouth. In this room, after what I now knew about her death, it took every ounce of discipline I had earned in 2 wars, one in Vietnam and one in this cell, to remain seated. Do not speak her name, I said. The words came out low. Dangerous. Every head in the room turned toward me. Derek flinched. I stood. Slowly. Placed both hands on the table. As majority shareholder holding 65% of Crawford Construction and Energy, I moved to remove Derek Crawford from his position as CEO. Terminated for gross misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, and criminal activity. Derek laughed. Desperate. Unhinged. 65%. Fine. You need 51 for removal. You have it alone. But that does not change the fact that I am still a board member. I still have my seat. I still have a voice. I looked at him. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I smiled. You have a seat, I said. But so does your mother. Derek went still. What? Margaret's trust designated an heir for the 9th board seat. It has been dormant for 3 years, waiting for the heir to meet the qualifications outlined in our company bylaws. I paused. Age 25. 3 years of professional experience in finance or corporate management. Derek's face drained of color. No, Mia turned 29 4 months ago. She has worked as a certified public accountant at Deloitte for 6 years. She exceeds every qualification. Derek shook his head, backing toward the door. That is not possible. She was helping me. She stood beside me. I looked toward Russell. Russell walked to the boardroom door, opened it. The sound that followed would stay with me for the rest of my life. Footsteps, click, 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 steady as a metronome. Each one deliberate, purposeful, announcing arrival the way a drumbeat announces war. Mia Crawford stepped through the doorway. White power suit. Immaculate. Her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, a black leather briefcase in her left hand. Her posture was steel and glass, her face composed into something fierce and beautiful and absolutely unbreakable. Derek's mouth opened. No sound came out. His hand reached toward her involuntarily, the gesture of a drowning man. Rebecca, thank God. Tell them this is crazy. Tell them. Mia walked past him, as if he were furniture. Did not slow. Did not glance. Did not acknowledge his existence by even the smallest movement of her eyes. She moved to the empty ninth chair, Margaret's chair, and sat down with the precision of someone claiming a throne. I let the moment settle. Let it fill the room. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice carried across the silence. May I introduce Mia Crawford, holder of 35% of Crawford Construction voting shares, inherited through Margaret Crawford's trust, the ninth and final board member. Derek staggered backward. 35%. Combined with your 65. That is, 100%, I confirmed. You own nothing, Derek. You never did. Mia set her briefcase on the table, opened it with a deliberate click, and when she raised her eyes to meet Derek's, what I saw in my daughter's face was not triumph. It was 2.5 years of war finally reaching its end. Mia extracted a USB drive from her briefcase and handed it to Russell without a word. He connected it to the wall screen. A new presentation appeared. The title slide made several board members shift in their seats. Evidence log. April 2023 through October 2025. Compiled by Mia Elena Crawford, CPA. 2.5 years, Mia said. Her voice was clear, professional, carrying no emotion that was not deliberately placed. For 2.5 years, I worked beside Derek Crawford. I attended his meetings. I managed his accounts. I smiled at his dinners and laughed at his jokes and pretended I believed every lie he told about our father. She clicked to the next slide. Bank records. Wire transfers. Each one highlighted, annotated, traced to its destination. With forensic precision. Shell Company 1. Lone Star Consulting LLC. Registered in Delaware. Beneficial owner, Brooke Palmer Crawford. Received $640,000 in consulting fees for services never rendered. She clicked again. Shell Company 2. Prairie Wind Holdings. Cayman Islands. Received $890,000. Same pattern. No services. No deliverables. Just money disappearing into accounts controlled by Derek's wife. Derek stood frozen near the door where security had not yet reached him. His mouth worked. No sound emerged. His eyes fixed on the screen as slide after slide dismantled his empire in clean, irrefutable detail. Shell Company 3. Mia continued. Cornerstone Capital Group. Newark, New Jersey. This one is interesting. She paused. Let the room lean forward. Registered to Vincent Anthony Castellano, construction contractor, known associate of organized crime families, operating in the tri-state area. Patricia Holden's hand went to her mouth. Raymond Torres pushed back from the table. Derek found his voice. That is not. I do not know any Vincent Castellano. No. Mia turned to look at him for the first time. But your wife does. Vincent Castellano is Brooke's father. The words detonated in the silence. Derek's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, then something darker. Recognition. Pieces falling into place behind his eyes. Her father, he whispered. Mia clicked forward. Emails between Brooke Crawford and Vincent Castellano. Sent from an encrypted account she believed was untraceable. She turned back to the board. In these communications, Brooke reports regularly on Crawford Construction's financials, contract bids, and proprietary technology. She was feeding confidential business information to her father's organization. Every major contract we lost in the past 2 years was underbid by a Castellano-affiliated company within 48 hours of our submission. Corporate espionage, Russell clarified for the room, combined with racketeering, wire fraud, and embezzlement, Federal RICO charges. Mia was not finished. She clicked again. A payment record appeared. $50,000. Wired from Lone Star Consulting LLC to an individual account in Fort Worth, Texas. This payment, Mia said, and her voice finally betrayed something. A hairline fracture in the professional mask. This payment was made 3 years and 2 months ago to a mechanic named Ray Gonzalez for services rendered on a 2019 Lexus RX 350. She paused. The room was absolutely silent. Our mother's car. Patricia Holden made a sound. Small. Broken. Margaret Crawford's death was not an accident. Mia's jaw tightened. She forced the words through clenched teeth. Brooke Crawford paid $50,000 to have our mother's brake lines severed. 3 days later, Mom lost control on I-35 and died on impact. Derek grabbed the back of a chair. His legs seemed to be failing him. His face had gone the color of ash. "No," he said. "No. That is not. Brooke would not." "Brooke," Mia said with quiet fury, "killed our mother. Then she married you. Then she helped you frame our father for crimes she and her family committed. And for 2.5 years, I sat beside both of you and documented every single moment of it." She stood, hands braced on the table, finally looking directly at Derek with everything she had suppressed for 912 days breaking through. "Do you have any idea what that cost me?" Her voice rose, lost its professional edge, became raw and human and furious. "Pretending to be on your side. Pretending I believed Dad deserved prison. I had to look him in the eye through that visitation glass and tell him to give up. I had to watch him suffer and not show anything. Not one crack. Because if you suspected for 1 second, everything would have been lost." Derek took a step toward her, hand outstretched. "Mia, I am your brother. I did not know about Mom. I swear I did not. You were my brother." Mia slammed her palm on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Several board members flinched. Past tense. That ended the day you chose money over family. The day you stood in a courtroom and lied about the man who raised you, who loved you, who gave you everything. I stood. The room fell silent. My voice carried without effort. All those in favor of removing Derek Crawford from his position as CEO and proceeding with criminal prosecution. 9 hands rose. Every chair. Unanimous. "Motion passes," I said. 9-0. Derek Crawford is terminated effective immediately. Russell. Russell pressed a button on the conference phone. Security appeared in the doorway. 2 men. Professional. Neutral. Derek looked around the room one last time, searching for mercy, for a crack in the wall, for anything. "Dad." His voice was small now, broken. "I did not know about Mom. I swear, I said nothing." There was nothing left to say to him. Not here. Not now. The security guards took his arms. Gently, but firmly. Derek did not resist. The fight had drained from him like water from a broken vessel. He let them guide him toward the door, his feet shuffling on the marble he had once walked with such confidence. Mia had turned away, facing the window, her back to her brother, her shoulders rigid with the effort of not breaking. As Derek reached the threshold, Mia spoke. Quiet, almost inaudible, but every person in that room heard it. And Derek. That is not even the worst part. Wait until you hear what your wife did to Mom. Derek stopped, turned. His face a wasteland of confusion and horror. He opened his mouth, closed it. The security guards pulled him forward. The boardroom door closed behind them with a sound like a coffin lid. The silence that followed lasted 10 seconds. 20. The board members sat motionless, processing, absorbing. Patricia Holden had tears running silently down her face. Marcus Webb stared at his hands. Mia remained at the window, her back to the room. Her shoulders had begun to tremble. If there is no further business. Patricia's voice was gentle. I believe we should adjourn. They filed out quietly, one by one. Russell gathered his materials, nodded to me, stepped out, closed the door. The room was empty now, just me and my daughter, and 2.5 years of everything she had carried alone. I walked to her, placed my hand on her shoulder. Mia's control shattered. She turned and collapsed against me, her face pressed into my chest, and she cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. The sound of someone who had held everything together for far too long, finally letting it all break apart. I held her, the way I had held her when she was 5 years old and afraid of thunder, the way Margaret used to hold her after nightmares. I am sorry, she gasped. Dad, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I know, I said, my own eyes burning, my arms tight around her. I always knew. That evening, we sat in the penthouse. The boardroom felt like another lifetime already, though only hours had passed. Dallas glowed through the windows. A city of lights spread to the horizon, indifferent to the war being waged among its towers. Mia had stopped crying an hour ago. She sat curled in an armchair, her white suit jacket draped over the arm, her shoes kicked off. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that goes past physical into something deeper, something bone level. The cost of 2.5 years of living a lie written across her face in shadows and hollows that should not belong to a 29-year-old. I sat across from her, Margaret's ring on my pinky, catching lamplight. I turned it slowly. Together we build. Tell me, I said. Everything. From the beginning. Mia pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, made herself small in a way I had not seen since she was a child. 6 months after your conviction, she began. Her voice was raw, stripped of the professional polish she had worn like armor in the boardroom. Derek invited me to dinner. Celebration, he called it. His promotion to CEO. I sat at that table, Mom's table, and I watched him and Brooke toast each other with Mom's crystal glasses. They laughed about you, called you paranoid, unstable, said prison would do you good. Her jaw tightened. I smiled. I nodded. I agreed with everything they said. Then I went to the bathroom and threw up. Mia. That night I decided I could not fight them openly. Derek controlled everything. The lawyers, the accounts, the narrative. If I confronted him, he would cut me off. I would lose access, lose any chance of helping you. She met my eyes. So I became invisible, the supportive sister, the quiet accountant who believed her brother was a good man. How did you find Carlos? I needed someone inside, someone who could protect you and carry messages without raising suspicion. I spent 2 months searching. Former military, private investigators, people who understood loyalty. She smiled faintly. Carlos was retired in San Antonio. I walked into his office and told him everything. He did not hesitate. Not for 1 second. He said, and here Mia's voice shifted, roughened into an imitation of Carlos's rasp. He said, Jim Crawford saved my life in '68. I would walk through fire for that man. Prison is nothing compared to the Mekong. I thought of Carlos, those 18 months on the bunk above me, watching, guarding, never once revealing what he truly was. He loved you, Mia said quietly. Every report he sent me, he always ended the same way. Jim is strong. Jim is sharp. Jim is ready. And the evidence? How did you gather it without Derek knowing? 2 a.m. Every time. Mia's eyes went distant. Derek kept everything in his home office at Highland Park. I had a key. I would wait until he and Brooke were asleep, then copy files onto a flash drive. Financial records, emails, wire transfer confirmations. She paused. One night, about 14 months in, Brooke came downstairs for water. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. I had the USB in my hand and nowhere to hide it. I slid it under my tongue and pretended I was getting a glass of milk. Under your tongue. For 4 minutes. while she stood 3 feet away talking about a recipe she wanted to try. I shook my head. The courage, the nerve, the sheer will required to do that. Week after week, month after month. When did you find it? I asked. The voice came out rougher than I intended. About Margaret. Mia's face changed. Something dark passed behind her eyes. 8 months ago. I was going through a secondary set of accounts. Shell companies within shell companies. Brooke was more careful with this one. Lone Star Consulting. It had almost no activity, just one payment, $50,000 to a personal account in Fort Worth. She took a shaky breath. I traced the account to Ray Gonzalez. Auto mechanic, specialty in brake systems. I found his shop, drove there, sat in my car outside for an hour trying to understand what I was looking at. Mia, I knew, Dad, before I even confirmed it. I knew what that payment meant. Mom's brakes did not just fail. They were made to fail. Her voice broke. Tears spilled over again. Not the wrenching sobs from the boardroom. Something quieter, sadder. The grief of a daughter who had lost her mother twice. Once to death. Once to the truth about that death. I went home that night and sat on my kitchen floor and cried until I could not breathe. Then I got up, washed my face, and the next morning I walked into Derek's office and smiled at him and asked about his weekend. I reached across the space between us and took her hand, squeezed until she squeezed back. That is when you contacted the FBI, I said. She nodded. Agent Diana Torres, Organized Crime Division. I brought her everything. The shell companies, the Castellano connection, Ray Gonzalez, all of it. She was skeptical at first. A woman walking in with a USB drive claiming her sister-in-law orchestrated a murder. But the evidence was solid. Forensic-grade documentation. Within a month, they opened a full RICO investigation. And Brooke never suspected. No. Mia wiped her eyes. I was careful. I never changed my behavior. Never pulled away from dinners. Never stopped smiling. Every Sunday I visited you in prison and pretended to be cold and distant, and I hated myself for it every single time. I remembered those visits. Mia sitting across the glass, face blank, voice flat, telling me nothing would change, telling me to accept my situation. Each visit a knife in my chest. The visitation room, I said. When you told me to sign, when you said goodbye, Mia's face crumpled. I practiced that speech for 2 weeks. In my car. In front of mirrors. I needed it to sound real, cold, convinced. And when I sat across from you and saw your face, she choked, saw how thin you were, how tired. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell you everything. Why did you say goodbye instead of see you tomorrow? Because I was saying goodbye to the act. To the version of myself that had to pretend. I knew the next time you saw me, you would see the real me. She took a shuddering breath, and I was terrified you would never forgive me for those 2.5 years of silence. I stood, crossed to her chair, pulled her up, and wrapped my arms around her the way I had when she was 5, and afraid and new to our family. The way Margaret used to. The way a father holds a daughter who has given everything and asked for nothing. You saved me, I said. My voice broke. I did not care. You gave up 2.5 years of your life. You carried this alone. You watched me suffer, and you could not say a word, and you did it anyway. Because that is who you are. I missed you, she whispered into my shoulder. Every single day. I missed my dad. I am here now, I said. And I am never letting go. We stood there in the penthouse. Father and daughter. 40 stories above Dallas. 2.5 years of separation and silence finally closing like a wound beginning to heal. Then Mia pulled back, wiped her face, and something shifted in her expression. Professional. Focused. Dad. There is one more thing. I waited. FBI arrested Brooke at DFW Airport 3 hours ago. Terminal D. Gate 37. She was trying to board a flight to Mexico City. They found $2.3 million in wire transfers initiated from a laptop in her carry-on. She paused. It is over. All of it. I looked at my daughter. This warrior. This soldier who had fought a war no one could see, and won it with patience and courage and love. And for the first time in 913 days, I let myself believe it. It was over. And we had won. 3 days later, the storm broke. 4 in the morning. Still dark. Dallas asleep beneath a thin October fog. And across 3 states, 47 FBI agents moved simultaneously. I was not there for any of it. I watched from the penthouse with Mia beside me, both of us in pajamas, both holding coffee that grew cold in our hands as Russell called with updates every 15 minutes. But I will tell you what happened the way it was told to me, the way the news would later confirm. In Dallas, a 12-agent team executed a federal search warrant at Brooke Crawford's last known address, a rented apartment on McKinney Avenue she had maintained secretly for 2 years. Inside, they found 3 laptops, 4 burner phones, and a safe deposit box key that would later lead to $1.4 million in bearer bonds hidden at a Bank of America branch in Plano. In Fort Worth, a second team arrived at the home of Ray Gonzalez, the mechanic, the man who had cut Margaret's brake lines for $50,000. He answered the door in boxers and a stained undershirt, blinking at badges and drawn weapons. He did not run, did not resist. According to the report, he simply said, "I have been waiting for this," and put his hands behind his back. But the main event was Newark, New Jersey. Vincent Anthony Castellano lived in a 6,000-square-foot colonial in Short Hills, gated, 4 security cameras, a Rottweiler in the yard, 2 bodyguards who slept in a guest house beside the pool, 23 agents, armored vehicles, a battering ram that took the front door off its hinges at 4:03 Eastern Time. They found Vincent in his bathrobe, standing in his kitchen, eating leftover lasagna from the refrigerator as if nothing unusual was happening, as if he had been expecting them. Perhaps he had. He surrendered without incident. His bodyguards were less cooperative. One went through a window before being tackled on the back lawn. The other barricaded himself in the guest house bathroom for 40 minutes, before tear gas persuaded him otherwise. Across all locations, 14 people were arrested that morning. Shell company operators in Miami, a corrupt building inspector in Houston, 2 city officials in Newark who had accepted bribes to steer contracts toward Castellano-affiliated firms, an accountant in the Cayman Islands who had managed the offshore transfers, all of them connected. All of them pieces of a machine that had been running for over a decade. By 7 in the morning, it was over. Every piece swept from the board. At 9, Special Agent Diana Torres stood behind a podium at the FBI Dallas field office. 43. Sharp-featured, wearing a navy suit and the expression of someone who had worked a case for 8 months and was finally allowed to discuss it. "Today," she said. Cameras flashing. The FBI executed arrest warrants in connection with the largest construction-related RICO case in Texas history. The investigation revealed a multi-state criminal enterprise operating through shell companies, fraud, bribery, and in one case, murder. She paused for effect. "We are grateful to the civilian witness, whose courage and meticulous documentation made this prosecution possible." Civilian witness. Mia. Though her name would not be released for weeks. I watched the press conference from the penthouse couch. Mia sat beside me, her knees pulled up, staring at the screen with an expression I could not read. Relief, perhaps, or the strange emptiness that comes after a long battle finally ends. "Is it real?" she asked quietly. "Is it actually over?" I put my arm around her shoulders. "It is real." On the screen, Diana Torres fielded questions from reporters. How long has the investigation been active? What is the connection to the Crawford construction case? Is Benjamin Crawford cooperating with authorities? Russell called at 9:30. Voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of satisfaction. "It is done. Vincent Castellano is in federal custody in Newark. Brooke remains at Dallas County Jail. No bail for either. RICO charges carry mandatory detention. I thanked him, set the phone down, looked out at Dallas, waking up beneath pale morning light. The cranes and towers and steel. My city, my company, slowly being returned to order. But there was one more person I thought about that morning. One more piece of this tragedy I had not expected to feel anything for. 14 miles south, in a motel room that cost $45 a night, my son was watching the same news broadcast. Derek sat on the edge of his stained mattress. The television mounted to the wall with a security bracket played the FBI press conference on loop. Every channel, every angle, the same words repeating. RICO, Construction Fraude, Criminal Enterprise, Castellano, Castellano. He stared at the name on the screen. The chyron read Vincent Castellano, 62, arrested in Newark, NJ. RICO charges including conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. Castellano. The name he had never known. The name his wife had hidden behind Palmer. Behind smiles. Behind the bedroom door, where she whispered Papa, and moved the money. Derek reached for his cracked phone, opened a browser, typed with trembling fingers. Vincent Castellano, Newark, New Jersey construction. The results loaded. News articles going back 15 years. Castellano Construction LLC. Investigated twice for bid rigging. Acquitted both times on technicalities. Known associate of Gambino. Affiliated operators in northern New Jersey. Subject of ongoing federal monitoring. His wife's father. A mob-connected contractor who had been using Crawford Construction as a front. Using Brooke. Using Derek. Using all of them. Derek scrolled further. Found a photograph. Vincent Castellano at a charity event. Silver-haired. Heavy-set. Cold eyes above a smile that never quite reached them. And beside him in the photograph, arm linked through his, wearing a red dress and diamond earrings that Derek now recognized with sickening clarity, was Brooke, his wife, smiling beside her father. At an event dated 4 years ago, a year before she appeared in Derek's life as Brooke Palmer, bankruptcy attorney from Houston. Everything had been planned. From the very beginning, before Margaret's death, before the framing, before the trial, Brooke had been sent, deployed, a weapon aimed at Crawford Construction by a man who wanted to consume it. And Derek had opened the door, had welcomed her in, had believed her when she cried about grief and loneliness, had married her, had trusted her, had destroyed his own father because she whispered that it was the right thing to do. He set the phone down on the mattress, stared at the ceiling. The water stain above his bed had grown since yesterday, spreading like the truth, expanding to cover everything. She killed Mom. The thought arrived not as shock, but as a slow, terrible confirmation. And I helped her take everything else, not because he had known. He had not known about Margaret. He believed that with whatever remained of his conscience, but he had known his father was innocent. Somewhere deep beneath the greed and the ambition and the impatience, he had always known, and he had chosen to ignore it. Derek turned off the television, lay back on the mattress, stared at nothing. The silence pressed in from all sides. No Brooke, no money, no family, no explanations that would ever be enough. Somewhere in Dallas, his father was free. His sister was triumphant. Justice was arriving in black SUVs and federal warrants. And Derek Crawford was exactly where he deserved to be. Alone with the truth. Alone with everything he had helped destroy. January brought cold rain to Dallas. The Earl Cabell Federal Building stood gray on Commerce Street, its concrete darkened by weather. Security barriers lined the entrance. Reporters huddled under umbrellas. Every seat inside claimed. Mia and I climbed the steps hand in hand. Her grip tight, her navy suit crisp beneath her overcoat. Inside, the courtroom was packed. We took seats behind the prosecution table. Russell beside us. Carlos, one row back, arms crossed. The side door opened. Derek appeared first. Orange jumpsuit. Handcuffed. 30 pounds lighter. Face gaunt. hair long and uncombed. He looked 50, not 38. He sat without looking up. A man already defeated. Brooke came next. Separate table. Pale but composed, staring straight ahead at nothing. The prosecutor, Allison Grant, opened strong. This case is about a criminal enterprise disguised as a family. A woman who murdered her mother-in-law. A son who chose greed over blood. And an adopted daughter who sacrificed 2.5 years to bring the truth to light. The first 2 days established financial evidence. Shell companies. Forged signatures. Wire transfers. Brick by brick. Day 3. Allison called Mia to the stand. My daughter walked steadily to the witness box. Swore her oath. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was clear. James Crawford is my father. In every way that matters. When his own son sent him to prison, I knew I could not fight openly. So I went undercover for 2.5 years. I documented everything. Every fraudulent transfer. Every lie. I smiled at dinners while they mocked my father. I pretended to believe he was guilty when I knew he was innocent. What was the hardest part? Allison asked. The prison visitations. Looking him in the eye and telling him to give up. Knowing he might think I had abandoned him too. Why did you do it? Because he is my father. And that is what family does. Derek's lawyer stood. Thomas Pratt. Young. Overworked. But he had one card. Miss Crawford. James Crawford is not your biological father. Correct? Correct. Adopted at age 5. You share no DNA with the Crawford family. Yet you inherit 35% of a $100 million company. Is it not true you orchestrated this investigation out of financial self-interest? To eliminate the biological heir and claim an inheritance you have no right to? Mia leaned forward. Quiet. Dangerous. I spent 2.5 years in hell. I gave up my peace, my sleep, my relationships. I stood beside the man who destroyed my father and smiled at him every single day. If I wanted money, there were easier ways. I did this because James Crawford is my father. Blood gave him a traitor. Love gave him a soldier. Pratt retreated. Momentum broken. Then, Allison called me. I walked to the stand. Swore my oath. Faced 12 waiting faces. Mr. Crawford, Allison said. Tell us about Mia. 26 years ago, my wife Margaret and I had tried for 3 years to have children. Every treatment failed. We decided to adopt. The agency called about a 5-year-old girl whose mother had been killed in gang violence in El Paso. She had not spoken in 4 months. Silence in the courtroom. Margaret brought her home. Mia hid under the dining table for a week. Would not eat unless Margaret sat on the floor beside her. My wife spent every night on that floor. Reading. Singing. Waiting. 3 months later, Mia looked at Margaret and said one word. Mama. Margaret cried for 2 hours. My voice roughened. 6 months after that, Margaret became pregnant with Derek. Doctors called it a miracle. But Mia was already our daughter. Already loved. Already ours. I gripped the witness rail. Looked directly at the jury. Derek Crawford shares my DNA. He is my biological son, and he sent me to prison for a crime I did not commit. He helped the woman who murdered my wife. Mia Crawford does not share my blood, but she sacrificed 2.5 years to save me. She went to war when my own blood abandoned me. I stood straighter. Let my voice fill the room. Do not tell me blood makes family. Loyalty makes family. Sacrifice makes family. Love makes family. My daughter proved that for 912 days, and if this court cannot see it, then we have forgotten what family means. Silence. 3 jurors crying. The woman in the back row pressing tissues to her eyes. Derek with his head in his hands. Shoulders shaking. And Mia. Tears streaming. Mouthing 2 words through the stillness. Thank you. No further questions, Allison said. Pratt stood. Looked at the jury. Looked at me. Sat back down. No questions. Judge Marks nodded. The witness may step down. I returned to my seat. Mia grabbed my hand the moment I sat, squeezing until it hurt. Allison stood again, straightened her jacket, her voice clear and deliberate. Your Honor, the state calls its final witness. He arrived under protective federal custody last night. Derek's head snapped up, his face drained of what little color remained. His eyes went wide, searching, panicked, because he knew. Somewhere deep in whatever remained of his conscience, he already knew who was coming. Allison turned toward the courtroom doors. The state calls Ray Gonzalez. The doors opened, and the courtroom held its breath. The courtroom doors opened. A small man walked in, flanked by two federal marshals, late 40s. Thin, weathered skin the color of desert clay. His hands hung at his sides, and even from my seat I could see the calluses. Thick yellow ridges across his palms and fingers, the hands of a man who had spent 30 years working with tools and grease and metal. Ray Gonzalez wore a gray suit that did not fit well. The shoulders were too wide, the pants too long. A borrowed suit for a borrowed moment of courage. His eyes were red-rimmed. His chin trembled as he took the witness stand. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat down. His fingers gripped the rail so tightly his knuckles went white. Allison approached gently. Mr. Gonzalez, please state your occupation. Auto mechanic. His voice was barely above a whisper. 31 years. Specialized in brake systems and suspension. Mr. Gonzalez, approximately 3 years and 2 months ago, were you contacted by someone regarding a specific job? Ray nodded, then remembered he needed to speak. Yes, ma'am. A woman contacted me through a middleman. Someone I had done work for before. Off the books kind of work. What did she ask you to do? Ray's eyes dropped to his hands. She wanted me to modify the brake lines on a vehicle. A 2019 Lexus RX 350. She said it needed to look like wear and tear, like age, like something that could happen naturally. The courtroom was absolutely still. 12 jurors motionless. Every pen frozen above every notebook. Did she tell you whose vehicle it was? No, ma'am. Just gave me the VIN number and the parking location. Underground garage. At a shopping center. In Highland Park. I went at night. Took me 40 minutes. Allison's voice remained steady. What specifically did you do to the brake lines? I scored the hydraulic lines at 3 points. Shallow cuts. Not enough to fail immediately. But under pressure, hard braking, highway speeds. He swallowed hard. They would rupture. Complete loss of braking function within 2 to 5 days of normal driving. And how much were you paid? $50,000, cash. Delivered in a duffel bag to my shop 2 days after the job. Ray's voice cracked on the number. His eyes lifted. Found me in the gallery. I saw it there. The guilt. 3 years of it. Eating him alive from the inside. Mr. Gonzalez. Allison turned slightly toward the defense tables. Do you see the person who hired you in this courtroom? Ray's hand rose. Shaking. He pointed directly at Brooke. Her. The one on the right. She came to my shop once before the job. Brought photographs of the vehicle. Told me it needed to look natural. Said if I ever spoke about it, her family would find me. Every eye in the courtroom turned to Brooke. She sat motionless, hands folded in her lap, face completely blank. Not a flinch, not a flicker, not one micro-expression of guilt or fear, or anything human at all. She looked at Ray Gonzalez the way someone looks at a television, playing a show they have already seen. Allison continued. Mr. Gonzalez, 3 days after you modified those brake lines, what happened? Ray's composure shattered. Tears spilled down his weathered face. The woman died. On I-35, northbound. Lost control of the vehicle and hit a concrete barrier at 70 miles per hour. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I saw it on the news that night. And I knew what I had done. How have you lived with this knowledge? I have not. His voice raw. I drink. I do not sleep. I see her car every time I close my eyes. 3 years I have carried this. 3 years knowing I killed a woman for money. He looked at me again. I am sorry. I am so sorry. She was somebody's wife, somebody's mother, and I took her away for $50,000. I gripped Margaret's ring, turned it on my finger. Together we build. My wife. Driving to her garden club on a Tuesday morning, singing along to the radio. The brakes working fine for 2 days. Then 3. Then that moment on I-35 when she pressed the pedal and nothing happened. Nothing at all. 70 miles per hour and no way to stop. Had she been afraid? Had she known? Had there been one terrible second of understanding before the barrier? I forced the thoughts down, sealed them away. There would be time for grief later. Right now, there was justice. Allison turned toward Derek's table. Mr. Gonzalez, one final question. Were you aware that the victim of this crime was the mother of the defendant, Derek Crawford? No, ma'am. I did not know whose car it was until I saw the news. I did not know it was connected to any of these people until the FBI contacted me. Thank you. No further questions. Then it happened. Derek erupted from his chair. The sound that came from him was not words at first. It was something animal. Something broken beyond language. His chains rattled. His face was a mask of horror and rage and grief so raw, it made several jurors recoil. You killed my mother. The words tore from his throat. His body lurched toward Brooke's table. You killed her. You killed my mother. And you let me help you. You let me destroy Dad for you. 2 marshals seized him. He fought them, straining against handcuffs, veins bulging in his neck, tears streaming down his gaunt face. Judge Mark slammed her gavel. Order. Order in this court. Remove the defendant. They dragged Derek backward, his feet scraping the floor, his eyes locked on Brooke. And Brooke. She did not turn, did not flinch, did not react. She sat with her hands folded and her face empty, and looked straight ahead as if nothing was happening, as if the man screaming behind her did not exist. That was the moment I understood something about Brooke Castellano that I had not fully grasped before. She was not performing coldness. She was not suppressing emotion. There was simply nothing there. Whatever should exist inside a person where empathy and guilt and human connection live. In Brooke, that space was vacant, hollow. She had killed my wife the way someone cancels a subscription, without feeling, without weight. The doors closed behind Derek. His screams faded down the hallway. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. I looked down at my hand. Margaret's ring. White gold scratched smooth by 43 years of daily wear. 3 years I had visited her grave, believing God had taken her in an accident. 3 years laying flowers and talking to stone while the woman who murdered her sat at my dining table. But now the truth was spoken. In a federal courtroom, under oath, before 12 jurors and 100 witnesses and cameras that would carry Ray Gonzalez's confession to every screen in America. Margaret's death was no longer a secret. It was evidence. And evidence demanded justice. I looked at Brooke's motionless profile across the courtroom. That empty face. Those folded hands. Justice was coming, and it would not be gentle. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. 3 hours for 2.5 years of crimes. For murder. For embezzlement. For conspiracy. For the systematic destruction of an innocent man's life. 3 hours felt almost insultingly brief. But perhaps some truths are so clear they require no debate. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom with Mia beside me, her hand in mine. Neither of us speaking. There was nothing left to say. Everything that mattered had been said on the witness stand. Everything that mattered was now in the hands of 12 strangers. Carlos sat across from us. Arms folded, eyes closed, but not sleeping. I knew that stillness. It was the stillness of a soldier waiting for the final order. Patient. Ready. Russell paced. Checked his phone. Paced again. The only one among us who could not be still. At 2:47 in the afternoon, the bailiff appeared in the hallway doorway. Jury is back. We filed in, took our seats. The courtroom refilled in minutes, every bench, every standing space. The air compressed with anticipation. Derek was brought in. He moved slowly. Whatever had erupted in him during Ray's testimony had burned itself out. He sat at the defense table like an empty vessel, eyes fixed on the table surface, hands limp in his lap. Brooke was brought in separately, still composed, still that terrible blankness. She sat straight-backed and looked at nothing. All rise. Judge Marks entered, settled into her chair, surveyed the room. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood, a middle-aged man in a blue shirt, his hands steady, his voice clear. We have, Your Honor. The clerk took the verdict forms, handed them to Judge Marks. She read them silently. Her face revealed nothing. She handed them back. The defendant will rise. Derek Crawford. Derek stood, slowly, like a man moving through deep water. On the charge of embezzlement. How do you find? Guilty. Wire fraud. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Guilty. Obstruction of justice. Guilty. Accessory after the fact to murder in the first degree. Guilty. Each word landed like a hammer strike. Derek did not react, did not flinch, did not move, just stood there, absorbing each guilty, like a man who had already convicted himself months ago in a motel room with a cracked phone and a family photograph. The defendant will rise. Brooke Castellano Crawford. Brooke stood, smooth, unhurried, as if this were a board meeting she was required to attend. Murder in the first degree. Guilty. RICO conspiracy. Guilty. Wire fraud. Guilty. Obstruction of justice. Guilty. Bigamy. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Bigamy. The detail that had emerged during trial preparation. Brooke had never divorced Vincent Castellano's associate in New Jersey. Her marriage to Derek was legally void. One more lie in a cathedral of lies. Guilty. Brooke's expression did not change. Not one muscle. She simply sat back down when instructed and folded her hands. Judge Marks turned to sentencing. Mr. Derek Crawford. She studied him over her glasses. You participated in the framing of your own father. You facilitated embezzlement and fraud. While the court acknowledges your apparent ignorance of your mother's murder, your choices enabled and protected the person responsible. I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for 15 years. Derek's head bowed. A single nod. Acceptance. Or perhaps just exhaustion, beyond the ability to resist. Miss Castellano Crawford. The judge's voice hardened. You murdered Margaret Crawford. You conspired with organized crime to loot a legitimate business. You maintained a fraudulent marriage. You showed no remorse during these proceedings, and no regard for the lives you destroyed. I sentence you to 30 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 20 years. Additionally, all assets traceable to criminal activity are hereby forfeited. Brooke said nothing, did nothing, simply existed in that chair like a stone that had been told it would be buried. Vincent Anthony Castellano. Judge Marks read from a separate sheet. Tried in absentia on related RICO charges in the Eastern District of New Jersey. Sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The gavel came down. Final. Absolute. Court officers moved toward the defendants. Derek stood, allowed himself to be taken. But at the last moment, he turned. Found me in the gallery. His eyes were wet. His voice barely carried across the distance. Dad. I did not know about Mom. I swear to God I did not know. I am sorry. For all of it. I am so sorry. I looked at my son. This broken man in orange. This stranger who shared my blood and nothing else. I searched for something to say. Something that might bridge the canyon between us. Something that might acknowledge what he had just said. I found nothing. Derek waited. 1 second. 2. 3. Then he nodded slowly, as if my silence was the answer he expected. Perhaps the answer he deserved. The marshals guided him forward. He did not look back again. The door closed behind him. Mia's hand found mine. Squeezed. I squeezed back. "It is over," she whispered. "Dad, it is over." I pulled her into my arms right there on the courtroom bench, held her tight while something inside me that had been clenched for 912 days finally released. My shoulders shook. My eyes burned. I did not care who saw. I did not care about cameras or reporters or the crowd filing past. Margaret, I thought. It is done. They cannot hurt anyone else. Outside, the January rain had stopped. Pale sunlight broke through heavy clouds. The courthouse steps were slick and gleaming. Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. But I barely registered them, because there, at the bottom of the steps, stood Carlos Reyes, ramrod straight, silver hair combed back, wearing his old army dress jacket over civilian clothes, the metals catching winter light. And as I descended toward him, he snapped to attention and raised his right hand in a crisp military salute. I stopped, felt something rise in my chest, something from 50 years ago, from jungles and foxholes and the bonds that form when men keep each other alive through hell. I straightened my back, raised my own hand, returned the salute with the precision of a man who had never forgotten what it meant. "Mission accomplished, Sergeant Crawford," Carlos said, his voice rough with emotion. "Mission accomplished," I replied. We held the salute for 3 heartbeats. Then Carlos broke into that crooked grin, stepped forward, and pulled me into a bear hug that said everything words could not. Mia stood beside us, crying, smiling, her hand on Carlos's shoulder. The 3 of us, father, daughter, brother in arms, standing in winter sunlight on courthouse steps, victorious, exhausted, whole. But one mission remained. Not one of war, one of peace. One that required not a soldier's discipline, but a father's heart. Margaret was waiting. 6 months later, the Texas sky burned orange at dusk, and I stood where I had not allowed myself to stand for 3 years. Westland Memorial Park sat quiet on a Tuesday evening. The groundskeeper had gone home. Sprinklers hissed somewhere beyond the oak line, and the smell of fresh-cut grass mixed with something older, something that belonged to Margaret. Her headstone was simple. White Georgia marble, the way she wanted. No angels, no poetry. Just her name, the dates, and a single engraved bluebonnet at the bottom left corner. I had chosen that detail myself, 41 months ago, when my hands still shook from grief instead of rage. I lowered myself onto the bench Mia had installed black iron bolted into the earth with a small brass plate that read, "For the woman who built us before we built anything." "Hey, Maggie." My voice cracked on the second syllable. 72 years old, survived Vietnam, survived prison, survived betrayal, and 2 syllables of her name broke me open like wet cardboard. I set the bluebonnets against the stone. 13 stems. One for every year she ran the books while I poured foundations. One for every year she woke at 4 a.m. to pack my thermos. One for every year she told me I was more than concrete and rebar. "They're gone," I said. All of them. Derek got 25 years. Brooke got 30. That man she called Papa, he'll die inside a cell smaller than our first bathroom on Elm Street. The wind moved through the oaks. I chose to believe it was her listening. "I found out what she did to you, Maggie. The brake lines. $50,000, that's what your life cost to them. $50,000, and a mechanic who couldn't sleep for 2 years afterward." I pulled Margaret's ring from my pinky finger and held it up to the fading light. White gold, worn thin on the inside from 43 years of dishes. 43 years of holding my hand at church. 43 years of spinning it when she was nervous. I wore this every day inside. 912 days. The guards let me keep it because I told them it was worthless costume jewelry. I laughed, dry and broken. You would have slapped my arm for that lie. A jogger passed on the distant path. A mockingbird called from the pecan tree behind her row. The world continued. It always does. "Mia is extraordinary," I whispered. "You'd barely recognize her." She stood in a courtroom full of strangers and told them that family isn't blood, it's choice. She said you taught her that. The night you braided her hair for the first time, when she was 5, crying in our kitchen because her foster mother said Mexican girls don't get real families. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. No shame in it. No one watching but the dead, and the dead have seen us at our worst. I'm giving her the company, Maggie. All of it. Thursday morning, I'm signing the transfer documents. Crawford Construction. $112 million. 1,400 employees. 37 active projects, it's hers. Every brick. Every beam. The sprinklers shifted closer. A fine mist caught the last sunlight and threw tiny rainbows across the grass. She earned it. Not because she's your daughter. Not because she's mine. Because she sacrificed 2.5 years of her life pretending to hate me so she could save me. Because she slept in her car outside Derek's house with a camera in her lap. Because she found the truth about you when every cop, every detective, every insurance adjuster said accident. I stood. My knees protested 72 years and 30 pounds lost in prison will do that. I pressed my palm flat against the top of the marble. It was warm from the afternoon sun, the way her forehead used to feel when she napped on the porch swing in August. One more thing. We broke ground on the wind farm last month. 87 turbines across 600 acres in West Texas. Clean energy enough to power 40,000 homes. I named it Margaret's Field. I smiled. You always said I only built things that were heavy and gray. Well, these are white, Maggie. White and tall. And they spin in the wind like those pinwheels you used to put in the garden for Mia. The sky had gone purple now. Stars peeked through the east. I leaned down and kissed the top of the headstone. I'll come back Sunday. Mia wants to bring flowers too. She asked if you liked roses or bluebonnets. I told her both, but bluebonnets first. Always bluebonnets first. I walked back along the gravel path, past the iron gate, to the black Range Rover where Carlos waited with the engine idling. He didn't ask how it went. He never did. He just handed me a bottle of water and pulled onto the highway toward downtown. Thursday morning arrived fast. The Crawford Construction boardroom, the same room where Mia had revealed the 9th chair, now held a single document on the mahogany table. 27 pages. Transfer of controlling interest. Russell Keene slid the pen across. Mia sat opposite me in Margaret's old chair, wearing a navy blazer and the pearl earrings I had given Margaret on our 20th anniversary. You sure about this? Russell asked. Never been more sure of anything since the day I married her mother. Mia's eyes glistened. She didn't cry, she had cried enough for 2 lifetimes. Instead, she reached across the table, placed her hand over mine, and said 3 words. I won't fail. I signed. James Allen Crawford. The same signature Derek once forged. The same signature the FBI once questioned. Now it meant freedom, mine and hers. I know you won't, I said. You're her daughter. Outside, Dallas stretched golden in the January light. Cranes dotted the skyline, some of them ours, soon to be hers. Somewhere in West Texas, 87 turbines turned slowly in the winter wind, catching sunlight, making power from nothing but air and belief. Margaret's garden was growing. 1 year later, I sat on the porch of a house I built with my own hands. Not a penthouse. Not the Highland Park estate with its 6 bedrooms and Italian marble that Derek used to parade through like a king. A 3-bedroom craftsman on 2 acres outside Fredericksburg. Texas limestone walls, cedar beams, a tin roof that sang when it rained. I poured the foundation myself in March, when the wildflowers were just beginning to push through the red dirt. Took me 4 months. My back screamed every morning. My knees filed formal complaints. But I needed to remember what it felt like, the weight of wet concrete, the smell of pine sawdust, the satisfaction of something rising from nothing. Margaret would have loved this porch. Wide enough for 2 rocking chairs and a pitcher of sweet tea. Facing west, so every evening the hill country served up a sunset that looked like God was showing off. The screen door creaked behind me. Dad, your coffee's getting cold. Mia stepped out in jeans and a Crawford Construction polo navy blue, the new logo she redesigned herself. A simplified crane silhouette with a single bluebonnet at its base. The employees voted on it unanimously. "Let it get cold," I said. "Sit with me a minute." She lowered herself into Margaret's chair. I still called it that, even though Margaret never sat in it. Some things belong to people who aren't here anymore. "Board meeting went well?" I asked. "Better than well. We closed the Austin contract. 42 million, mixed-use development, green certified, zero waste construction. Largest sustainable project in Travis County history." She paused. "And Margaret's field hit full capacity last week. 40,000 homes powered, ahead of schedule by 3 months." I nodded. The numbers didn't surprise me. Mia had grown Crawford Construction from 112 million to 168 million in 12 months. She hired 43 new employees, opened a satellite office in San Antonio, and launched an apprenticeship program for formerly incarcerated workers. Carlos's idea, funded by a $2 million allocation from the operating budget. "Carlos called this morning," Mia added. 14 graduates from the first cohort. All employed. Zero recidivism. "Good man," I said. "He asked about you. Said you haven't returned his calls in a week." "I've been busy." "You've been building a chicken coop." I laughed a real laugh. The kind that starts deep in the belly and surprises you because you forgot your body could still make that sound. Those chickens needed a home. Nobody else was going to do it. Mia smiled. For a moment she looked exactly like her mother. Not Margaret by blood, but Margaret by everything that mattered. The way she tilted her head, the way she held silence like it was a gift instead of an absence. "I got a letter," she said quietly. I knew before she finished. The pause told me. The way her fingers tightened around her mug. "Derek." She nodded. "Handwritten. 3 pages. He says he's enrolled in the prison education program. Got his GED, starting college courses in January. Business ethics." She almost smiled at the irony. "He says he's sorry. Not to me, to you. He asked me to deliver it." She pulled an envelope from her back pocket. White, creased, from sitting. My name in handwriting I taught a 6-year-old boy to form looping J. Crooked A. The M that always looked like a mountain range. I took it. Held it. Did not open it. "Do you want to read it?" Mia asked. "Someday." I set it on the small table between our chairs, under the coffee mug, so the wind wouldn't take it. "Not today." She understood. That was the thing about Mia, she always understood which silences to fill and which to protect. We sat for a long time. The sun melted into the hills. A hawk circled the far pasture. Somewhere inside, a timer beeped the casserole Mia brought from that restaurant on Main Street, the one Margaret's friend used to own before she retired. "Dad? Yeah? Do you regret it? Any of it?" I thought about the question the way I used to think about blueprints, carefully, from every angle, checking the load-bearing walls before committing. I regret trusting Brooke. I regret not seeing what Derek was becoming. I regret every single day I spent in that cell, when I could have been here, watching you grow, building something real. I looked at her, but I don't regret who it made us. I don't regret learning that family isn't a bloodline. It's a choice you make every morning when you wake up and decide to love someone more than yourself. Mia set down her mug, crossed the porch, wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind, her chin resting on the top of my head the way I used to hold her when she was small enough to carry. "Mom would be proud of you," she whispered. "She'd be proud of us," I said. The hawk drifted lower. The casserole timer beeped again. The tin roof caught the last light and threw it back at the sky like a mirror. I was 73 years old. I had lost a wife, lost a son, lost 912 days of my life to a concrete box. But I had gained something no empire could buy, a daughter who chose me when blood chose betrayal, a legacy built on wind and light instead of greed, and a foundation so deep that no lie, no scheme, no amount of money could crack it. My name is James Crawford. I built my life twice. The second time, I built it right. If this story moved you, If you felt the anger, the injustice, and the redemption, hit that subscribe button, because every week, we bring you stories of people who lost everything and fought their way back. Drop a comment. What would you do if your own child betrayed you? Share this with someone who needs to hear that loyalty, not blood, is what makes a family.